The morning sun cast long shadows across New Terra Colony as Dae-ho Kim walked toward the medical center. His work boots clicked against the metal walkways that connected the various buildings of the settlement. Around him, the colony buzzed with activity. Human workers moved alongside their alien partners, loading cargo ships and maintaining the massive energy shields that protected them from the harsh winds of this frontier world. Dae-ho had been putting off this medical exam for weeks. As the lead engineer for Sector 7, he was always busy fixing something or designing new improvements for the colony. But today was different. Today he needed this clearance if he wanted the promotion to chief engineer. The position would give him access to the restricted areas where the real important work happened. The medical center stood tall among the other buildings, its white walls gleaming in the sunlight. As Dae-ho approached the entrance, he noticed several species coming and going. A tall, blue-skinned Villani doctor walked past him, her forearms carrying various medical devices. Two small, furry creatures from the Keth homeworld scurried by, chattering in their high-pitched language. Inside the lobby, Dae-ho checked in with the reception desk. The human clerk, a middle-aged woman named Ms. Lee, smiled at him warmly. "Good morning, Mr. Kim. Dr. Subin will see you shortly. Please take a seat." Dae-ho found an empty chair and sat down. He watched as various beings moved through the waiting area. This was what made New Terra special. Here, dozens of different species lived and worked together in peace. It had taken humanity 50 years to build these relationships after first contact, but now it seemed natural. Dae-ho Kim. The voice was soft but clear. He looked up to see a Villani female approaching him. She was shorter than most of her species, with the typical blue skin and large, intelligent eyes. Her medical coat was perfectly clean, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. "I am Dr. Subin. Please follow me." They walked down a long corridor lined with examination rooms. Subin's office was neat and organized. Medical certificates hung on the walls in both human and alien languages. A large screen displayed various biological charts and diagrams. "Please sit on the examination table," Subin said, pulling up his file on her computer. "This is a standard physical examination for your promotion. Nothing to worry about." Dae-ho climbed onto the padded table and tried to relax. Subin moved efficiently around the room, gathering her instruments. She had worked with humans before, and her techniques were smooth and practiced. "I will need to check your heart, lungs, and overall health," she explained. "There will also be blood tests and a full body scan. The colony requires complete medical records for all senior staff." She began with basic measurements: height, weight, blood pressure. Her 4 hands allowed her to work much faster than a human doctor. One pair held instruments while the other pair recorded data on her tablet. "Your blood pressure is excellent," she noted. "Heart rate is strong. Now I need you to remove your shirt so I can examine your chest and back." Dae-ho pulled his work shirt over his head without thinking. He had done this routine many times before. But as soon as the fabric cleared his shoulders, he heard Subin gasp. The doctor stood frozen, staring at his left shoulder blade. Her large eyes were wide with shock and her blue skin had paled to almost white. "What is it?" Dae-ho asked, trying to look over his shoulder. Subin stepped closer, her hands trembling slightly as she reached toward the scar on his back. It was roughly 6 inches across, with an unusual spiral pattern that looked almost like it had been burned into his skin by some kind of energy weapon. "This scar," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "When did you get this?" "I have had it since I was a child," Dae-ho replied. "Why? Is something wrong?" Subin pulled her hands back as if the scar might burn her. She walked around to face him, her expression filled with confusion and fear. "That shouldn't exist," she whispered. The words hung in the air between them like a challenge to everything they both understood about medicine and healing. Subin had seen thousands of injuries during her career. She had treated burns from plasma weapons, cuts from energy blades, and wounds from creatures that most humans had never even heard of. But this scar was different. "I don't understand," Dae-ho said. "It's just an old burn. I got it when I was 7 years old." Subin moved to her computer and began typing rapidly. Medical databases flashed across the screen as she searched through injury patterns and weapon signatures. Her 4 hands worked independently, pulling up different files and cross-referencing data. "Tell me exactly how you received this injury," she said without looking away from her screen. Daeho shifted uncomfortably on the examination table. This was not how medical exams usually went. "I don't really remember much. I was found as the sole survivor of a transport crash when I was 7. The colony records say I was unconscious when they found me. I woke up in a medical pod 3 days later with this scar already healed. Who treated your initial injuries?" "I don't know. The files are classified above my clearance level. They said it was standard procedure for crash survivors." Subin stopped typing and turned to face him. Her expression had changed from confusion to something that looked almost like fear. "Mr. Kim, I have been treating humans for 15 years. I have access to medical databases from 12 different species. I have seen injuries from weapons that most people don't even know exist." She paused and pointed at his scar. "But I have never seen cellular damage like that. The pattern suggests exposure to a type of energy that should have killed you instantly." Daeho felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" "The burn pattern shows quantum-level disruption. Your cells were damaged and rebuilt at the molecular level. No known medical technology can heal that kind of injury, and no known weapon creates that specific pattern." She walked closer to him again, studying the scar more carefully. "Yet here you are, alive and healthy. Your cells have not only survived, but adapted to carry this pattern. It's as if your body learned to live with something that should be impossible." Daeho put his shirt back on, suddenly feeling very exposed. "Maybe you're wrong. Maybe it's just an unusual burn." Subin shook her head. "I am not wrong. This scar is evidence of technology that I have never seen before. Technology that might not be from any of the species we know." The examination room fell silent except for the soft hum of the medical equipment. Both of them realized that what had started as a routine checkup had become something much more serious. "What happens now?" Daeho asked. Subin looked at her computer screen, then back at him. "Now I need to run more tests, much more detailed tests, and I need to contact some people who might have answers." She walked to her desk and made a note in his file. But instead of the usual medical observations, she wrote something in her own language that Daeho could not read. "Can I still get my medical clearance for the promotion?" he asked. "Yes, your health is perfect. But Mr. Kim, I think your scar is connected to something much bigger than a simple promotion." She looked at him seriously. "Something that might change everything we thought we knew about human history on New Terra." As Daeho left the medical center, he could not shake the feeling that his quiet life as a colony engineer was about to become much more complicated. Behind him, Subin was already making calls to people whose names appeared on no official colony roster. The scar on his back, which he had carried without question for 20 years, was apparently the first clue in a mystery that would soon shake the foundations of human-alien cooperation in the galaxy. 3 days had passed since Daeho's strange medical examination. Subin had not slept well during any of those nights. She kept thinking about the impossible scar and the questions it raised. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that spiral pattern burned into human flesh. Her private laboratory was located in the restricted section of the medical center. Only senior researchers had access to this area, where the most advanced equipment was kept. Subin had been working here since dawn, running test after test on the tissue samples she had secretly taken from Daeho's scar. The results made no sense. She stared at the data on her screen for the 100th time. The cellular structure showed signs of damage from an energy weapon, but not just any weapon. The quantum signatures suggested technology far beyond anything currently known to the galactic community. "Computer, run comparison analysis with all known energy weapon signatures," she commanded. The screen flashed as the system searched through databases from dozens of species. After several minutes, the results appeared. No match found. Subin leaned back in her chair, frustrated. In 15 years of medical research, she had never encountered anything like this. The burn pattern was not random. It showed clear signs of intelligent design, as if someone had deliberately created this specific type of injury. More disturbing was what the deeper scans revealed. The damaged cells had not just healed. They had adapted. The tissue around the scar showed resistance patterns that should not exist in human biology. It was as if Daeho's body had learned to defend against this type of energy attack. A soft knock on her laboratory door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Taemin Park entered the room. The colony administrator was a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes. He had been running New Terra for 12 years and had seen his share of unusual situations, but his expression today showed concern. "Dr. Subin, I need to speak with you about your recent database access requests." Subin felt her stomach tighten. She had hoped her research would go unnoticed, but Taemin monitored all access to classified information. "I was conducting medical research," she replied carefully. "Medical research that required access to historical weapon databases and classified injury reports?" Taemin moved closer to her workstation. "What exactly are you looking for?" Subin considered lying, but she knew Taemin was too experienced to be fooled. She had worked with him for years and respected his judgment. Maybe it was time to share her discovery. "I found something during a routine medical exam. Something that should not exist." She pulled up the scan results on her screen. Taemin studied the images with growing concern. "Whose tissue samples are these?" he asked. "Daeho Kim. He came in for his promotion physical 3 days ago." Taemin was quiet for a long moment. Then he activated his personal communicator. "Hiya Jin, please come to Dr. Subin's laboratory immediately. We need your expertise." While they waited, Subin explained her findings in detail. She showed Taemin the cellular damage patterns, the unusual healing response, and most importantly, the quantum signatures that suggested impossible technology. Hiya Jin arrived 15 minutes later. The human xenobiologist was one of the colony's most trusted scientists. She specialized in studying the biological differences between species and had worked closely with both humans and aliens for years. "What's the emergency?" she asked as she entered the lab. Taemin gestured to the screen. "Dr. Subin has made a discovery that might change everything we know about human settlement on New Terra." Hyejin studied the data carefully. Her expression grew more serious with each passing minute. "These cellular patterns," she said slowly, "they're not natural. Someone or something modified this tissue at the molecular level." "That's what I thought," Subin agreed. "But what kind of technology could do this?" Hyejin was quiet for a long time. Then she looked at both of them with an expression that mixed fear and excitement. "I need to show you something. Something that I was hoping I would never have to discuss." She moved to Subin's computer and accessed a secure database that required multiple authorization codes. After several minutes of typing, classified files began appearing on the screen. "What are those?" Taemin asked. "Historical records, from the early days of human expansion into space. Most of this information is classified at the highest levels. The files contained reports of mysterious attacks on human colonies and ships. Entire settlements had been found empty, with no signs of conventional weapons damage. Ships had been discovered drifting in space, their crews missing and their hulls showing strange energy burns. The attacks stopped about 300 years ago," Hyejin explained. "No one knew what caused them or why they ended. The official reports blamed equipment failures or unknown natural phenomena." Subin studied the images from the old attack sites. The energy burn patterns looked familiar. "These marks," she said, pointing at the screen. "They're similar to the pattern on Daeho's scar." "Not similar," Hyejin corrected. "Identical." Taemin sat down heavily in a nearby chair. "Are you telling me that Daeho was injured by the same force that attacked human colonies 3 centuries ago?" "It's worse than that," Hyejin continued. "According to these classified files, there were rumors of a secret human research program, something called Project Prometheus. The goal was to create humans who could survive these mysterious attacks." Subin felt pieces of a terrible puzzle clicking into place. The program was officially terminated 25 years ago after a catastrophic failure. All records were sealed. But if Deho carries these cellular modifications, then maybe the program succeeded at least once. They sat in silence, absorbing the implications. If Deho was the result of genetic modification designed to fight an unknown enemy, then his simple life as a colony engineer was built on a lie. We need to tell him, Taimin said finally. Tell him what? Subin asked. That he might be a living weapon created to fight an enemy that disappeared centuries ago. He has a right to know the truth about his past. Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the colony. The three of them rushed to the main communication center, where emergency broadcasts were already coming in from other human settlements. This is Colony Alpha 7, a panicked voice crackled through the speakers. We are under attack by unknown vessels. Their weapons are unlike anything we have ever seen. The energy signatures are off all our charts. More transmissions followed, from different colonies. All reported the same thing, attacks by mysterious ships using weapons that seemed to ignore conventional shields and armor. Subin felt her blood turn cold. She looked at the tissue samples from Deho's scar, then at the historical attack records on her screen. They're back, she whispered. After 300 years, they're back. Taimin immediately began organizing the colony's defenses. But they all knew that conventional weapons had never been effective against these attackers. We need to find Deho, Heejin said urgently. If he really is immune to their weapons, he might be our only hope. Subin gathered her research data and prepared to leave the laboratory. As they headed toward the door, she couldn't help but think about the irony. Deho had come in for a simple medical exam to get promoted. Instead, he might have just become the most important human in the galaxy. The scar that had puzzled her 3 days ago was no longer just a medical mystery. It was possibly the key to humanity's survival against an enemy that had returned from the depths of space to finish what they had started centuries ago. Outside, the colony's defense systems activated as unknown ships approached New Terra's outer boundaries. The peaceful settlement that had represented the best of human-alien cooperation was about to become a battlefield. And somewhere in Sector 7, Dae-ho Kim was still going about his normal day, completely unaware that the burn scar he had carried since childhood might hold the secret to saving everyone he had ever known. Dae-ho was fixing a power coupling in Sector 7 when the alarm started blaring. He dropped his tools and looked up at the emergency lights flashing red throughout the engineering bay. In 12 years of working on New Terra, he had never heard the colony-wide attack warning. His communicator crackled to life. All senior staff report to the main command center immediately. This is not a drill. Dae-ho grabbed his jacket and ran through the corridors toward the command center. Other colonists were moving quickly, some heading to evacuation points while others went to their emergency stations. The mixed crowd of humans and aliens showed the same expression of worry and confusion. When he reached the command center, he found chaos. Dozens of people surrounded large screens showing tactical displays of New Terra's outer space. Red dots marked approaching ships that moved in formations unlike anything he had seen before. Dae-ho, Tae-min called from across the room. Over here. He pushed through the crowd to where Tae-min stood with Subin and a woman he recognized as Hee-jin, the xenobiologist. All three looked extremely worried. What's happening? Dae-ho asked. We're under attack, Tae-min replied. But that's not the biggest problem right now. Subin stepped forward and looked directly at him. Dae-ho, we need to talk to you about your medical examination, about your scar. My scar? What does that have to do with an attack? Before anyone could answer, the main screen flashed with an incoming transmission from the colony's outer defense stations. Command, this is Defense, Platform Alpha. Unknown ships have breached the outer perimeter. Their weapons are cutting through our shields like they don't exist. We need immediate backup. The transmission cut to static. On the tactical display, the red dot marking Defense Platform Alpha disappeared. Wu Sung, the colony's security chief, approached their group. He was a tall man with military training who had served in the outer colonies before coming to New Terra. Administrator Park, our conventional weapons are completely useless against these ships. Their energy shields seem to absorb our attacks and redirect them back at us. Tae-min nodded grimly. How long before they reached the main colony? 6 hours at their current speed. Subin grabbed Daeho's arm. We need to show you something, right now. They left the chaos of the command center and went to a private briefing room. Once the door was secured, Yejin activated a portable display screen and began showing classified files. Daeho, what I'm about to tell you will change everything you thought you knew about yourself, she began. The screen showed historical records of mysterious attacks on human colonies dating back centuries. Ships and settlements destroyed by unknown weapons, energy patterns that defied all known physics. These attacks stopped 300 years ago, Hyojin explained. But they're starting again, the same energy signatures, the same impossible technology. Daeho studied the images. Something about the burn patterns looked familiar, but he couldn't place why. There's more, Subin added. She showed him detailed scans of his own tissue samples. Your scar contains cellular modifications that show resistance to this exact type of energy weapon. That's impossible. I got this scar in a transport crash when I was 7. No, Taemin said quietly. You didn't. He activated another display showing classified colony records. The file was marked with security levels far above Daeho's clearance. You were part of a secret research program called Project Prometheus. The goal was to create humans who could survive attacks from these mysterious enemies. Daeho felt his world spinning. You're saying I was experimented on as a child? Not just experimented on, Subin explained. Successfully modified. Your cells have been changed at the quantum level to resist their weapons. The scar on your back is proof that the modification worked. The briefing room fell silent except for the distant sound of alarms and activity from the command center. Daeho sat down heavily in a chair trying to process what they were telling him. Are there others like me? He asked finally. Woo-sung pulled up another file. We've been checking colony records across human space. We've found references to dozens of children who were part of the program. Most were listed as killed in accidents or missing in transport crashes. But some survived, Yejin added. We've already contacted 3 other colonies and found people with similar scars and cellular modifications. Daeho looked at his hands, wondering what else about his body had been changed without his knowledge. Why are you telling me this now? Because, Subin said, you might be our only chance to survive what's coming. She showed him real-time sensor data from the approaching enemy ships. The energy signatures were identical to the patterns found in his scar tissue. Your modified cells don't just resist their weapons, she explained. They seem to actively disrupt the enemy's energy fields. If we're right, you could actually damage their ships just by being near them. A new alarm sounded, and Woo-sung's communicator activated with an urgent message. Security Chief, we've lost contact with Defense Platform Beta. The enemy ships are moving faster than expected. Time to colony impact is now 4 hours. Taemin looked at Daeho seriously. We need to evacuate the civilians and prepare for a battle, but if you're willing to help, you might be able to turn the tide. Daeho stood up slowly. Everything he had believed about his life was built on lies, but thousands of people were depending on him now. What do you need me to do? Subin smiled. For the first time since the crisis began. First, we need to activate your modifications fully. The process will be painful, but it will unlock abilities you don't even know you have. And then you're going to do something no human has done in 3 centuries, Woo-sung replied. You're going to fight back against the destroyers and win. As if responding to his words, the colony shook as the first enemy weapons struck the outer, defensive barriers. Through the windows, they could see strange lights in the sky moving in impossible patterns. Daeho took a deep breath and looked at the people who had just turned his quiet life upside down. He thought about all the families in the colony, both human and alien, who had trusted each other enough to build a peaceful life together on this frontier world. Let's do it, he said. Subin immediately began preparing the equipment needed for the activation process. As she worked, she couldn't help but notice that Daeho's scar was already beginning to glow faintly, as if responding to the presence of the approaching enemy ships. The modified cells in his body were waking up after 20 years of dormancy. Soon they would discover just how successful Project Prometheus had really been. Outside, the first enemy ships entered New Terra's atmosphere, their alien forms cutting through the sky like dark harbingers of destruction. But for the first time in centuries, humanity was ready to fight back. The real battle was about to begin. The activation chamber was located in the deepest level of the medical center. Subin had converted an emergency surgery room into a makeshift laboratory, filling it with quantum scanning equipment and cellular modification devices that most people had never seen before. Daeho lay on the medical table, connected to dozens of monitoring cables. The process would take several hours, and there was no guarantee he would survive it. Subin had explained that they were essentially rewriting his genetic code while he was awake. "The modifications in your cells are dormant right now," she said, as she prepared the equipment. "We need to activate them fully, but the shock to your system will be extreme." Haejin monitored the life support systems while Taimin coordinated the colony's defense from a portable command station in the corner of the room. Reports continued coming in about the approaching enemy ships. "Defense platform Gamma has fallen." Wusung's voice crackled through the communicator. "Enemy ships are now 2 hours from the main colony. Whatever you're doing down there, you need to do it faster." Subin increased the power to the cellular modification array. Immediately, Daeho's scar began glowing brighter. The spiral pattern became visible even through his shirt, pulsing with a strange blue light. "It's working," Haejin observed, watching the cellular scans. His modified tissue is responding to the activation energy. Pain shot through Daeho's body like lightning. Every nerve ending felt like it was on fire, and he could taste metal in his mouth. But worse than the physical pain was the flood of memories that suddenly filled his mind. He remembered being 7 years old in a laboratory similar to this one. Scientists in protective suits standing around him while machines hummed and beeped. A woman's voice saying, "The neural integration is complete. He won't remember any of this." But he was remembering now. Images flashed through his consciousness of other children in similar chambers, some screaming, some lying still and quiet, too quiet. "Daeho, stay with us," Subin called. "Your brain activity is spiking. Try to focus on my voice." More memories flooded back. The transport ship that had brought him and dozens of other children to the research facility. The kind doctor who had explained that they were going to help protect humanity from a terrible enemy. The burning pain as they injected quantum particles directly into his bloodstream. And then the attack. The facility under siege by ships that moved like flowing water through space. Energy weapons that turned solid matter into glowing dust. The evacuation pods launching as the building collapsed around them. "The boy is the key," a dying researcher had whispered as she placed him in an escape pod. "Protect the pattern. His cellular structure is changing rapidly," Haejin reported. "The modifications are spreading throughout his entire body." Daeho opened his eyes and saw that his hands were glowing with the same blue light as his scar. The light pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, growing stronger with each activation cycle. "I remember everything now," he said quietly. "There were 57 of us in the program. Children taken from colony worlds and told we were orphans." Subin paused the activation sequence. "What happened to the others?" "Most died during the modification process. Their bodies couldn't handle the quantum integration. I was one of only 12 who survived the full treatment." "Are the others still alive?" Taimin asked. Before Daeho could answer, a new voice spoke from the laboratory entrance. "Some of us are." Everyone turned to see a young woman standing in the doorway. She looked about Daeho's age with short black hair and intelligent eyes. Most remarkably, her left arm was glowing with the same blue light that emanated from Daeho. "My name is Nari," she said as she entered the room. "I arrived on the morning transport from Colony Beta 9. I felt the activation energy from halfway across the settlement." Subin immediately began scanning Nari with a portable sensor. "You have the same cellular modifications as Daeho. How did you find us?" "The same way he's probably been having dreams and flashbacks since you started the activation process," Nari replied. "We're connected at the quantum level. When one of us activates, the others feel it." She walked over to Daeho's medical table and placed her glowing hand on his arm. Immediately, both of their lights intensified. "There are 11 of us left," she continued, "scattered across human space, living normal lives and not knowing what we really are, until now." Deho felt strength flowing through his body as Nari's energy merged with his own. The pain from the activation process faded, replaced by a sense of power he had never experienced before. "We need to continue the process," Subin said urgently. "The enemy ships are getting closer and you're both only partially activated." "No," Nari said firmly. "Partial activation is enough for now. Full activation comes with a price that you haven't told him about." Subin looked uncomfortable. "What price?" "Show him the classified medical files from Project Prometheus. Show him what happened to the test subjects who underwent full activation." Reluctantly, Hyejin pulled up the restricted files on her portable display. The records showed disturbing images of test subjects who had been fully activated. Their cellular modifications had worked perfectly, giving them incredible resistance to enemy weapons, but the quantum changes had also burned them out from the inside. "Full activation gives us the power to fight the destroyers effectively," Nari explained. "But it also reduces our lifespan to days or weeks instead of years." The laboratory fell, silent as everyone absorbed this information. Deho looked at his glowing hands and realized that his choice was between a normal life and sacrificing himself to save the colony. "How many days?" he asked quietly. "The longest anyone survived full activation was 17 days, Nari replied. "Most lasted less than a week." Through the laboratory's communication system, Wusong's urgent voice interrupted their conversation. "All defense platforms are down. Enemy ships are entering the atmosphere. Impact in 30 minutes. We need those weapons online now." Taemin looked at both Daiho and Nari seriously. "I can't ask you to sacrifice your lives for us, but without your help, everyone on New Terra will die." Deho thought about his quiet life as an engineer, his small apartment, his work friends, his plans for the future. All of it would disappear when the destroyers reached the colony. But he also thought about the families he had seen in the corridors. Human children playing with young aliens. Scientists from different species working together to solve problems. The hope that places like New Terra represented for peaceful cooperation in the galaxy. "I'll do it," he said finally. Nari nodded. "So will I. But we do this together. The quantum connection between us will make us stronger." Subin began preparing the equipment for full activation. As she worked, she tried not to think about the fact that she was about to help 2 young people commit suicide to save everyone else. "There's something else you should know," Nari added as she lay down on a second medical table. "The other 9 survivors are already on their way here. They felt the activation energy across space and are coming to help." "Will they arrive in time?" Teho asked. "Some will. Others might not survive the journey. Full activation is the only way to travel faster than light using our modified biology, and it burns through our life force rapidly." Subin activated the full modification sequence for both of them simultaneously. The laboratory filled with blinding blue light as quantum energy flowed through their bodies. Both Deho and Nari screamed as their cells underwent final transformation. When the light faded, they stood up from the medical tables completely changed. Their entire bodies glowed with internal light, and the air around them shimmered with quantum distortions. "How do you feel?" Hyejin asked. Deho flexed his hands and watched reality bend slightly around his fingers. "Like I could tear apart a star with my bare hands." "That's not far from the truth," Nari said. "Our bodies are now living weapons designed specifically to disrupt the destroyer's technology." Above them, the first enemy weapons struck New Terra's main settlement. The battle for humanity's future was about to begin, and for the first time, in centuries humans had a chance to win. But victory would cost them the lives of the very people who made it possible. The first destroyer ship landed in New Terra's central plaza, like a piece of living shadow. It had no visible weapons or engines, but moved through the air as if space itself bent around it. The ship's hull seemed to absorb light, making it difficult to look at directly. From the medical center's observation deck, Deho and Nari watched the alien vessel settle onto the ground. Around them, The colony's population was evacuating to underground shelters, but they all knew that conventional hiding places would be useless against destroyer technology. The ship isn't attacking yet, Nari observed. They're scanning the colony first. Deho could feel the energy patterns emanating from the vessel. His modified cells responded to the alien technology with a burning sensation that was both painful and exhilarating. They're looking for something specific, he realized. They're looking for us. Subin finished her final scans of both activated humans. The quantum modifications had spread throughout their entire bodies, turning every cell into a living weapon against destroyer energy fields. Your biology is now completely incompatible with their technology, she explained. Just being near. Their ships should disrupt their power systems. But how close do we need to get, Nari asked. Based on the energy readings, physical contact would be most effective. You would need to actually touch their hull. Taman coordinated the evacuation efforts from his portable command station. Most alien species had already fled New Terra in their own ships, but many humans had chosen to stay and fight despite having no effective weapons. The colony's plasma cannons are completely useless, Wu Sung reported through the communication system. Their energy just gets absorbed and redirected back at us. 3 more destroyer ships landed around the colony perimeter. Each vessel began extending tendrils of dark energy that moved across the ground like living things, searching through buildings and underground areas. They're hunting, Deho said. They know we're here. A new voice spoke from behind them. That's because we're broadcasting quantum signatures like beacons. They turned to see a tall man walking into the observation area. Half of his body glowed with the familiar blue light of quantum modification, but the other half looked burned and damaged. I'm Minho, he said as he approached. I was stationed at Colony Gamma 4 when the attack started. I underwent partial activation and managed to destroy 2 destroyer scouts, but the energy feedback nearly killed me. Subin immediately began scanning him with her medical equipment. Your cellular modifications are unstable. You're burning out faster than the projected timeline. I know. I have maybe 6 hours left, but I had to get here to help. Through the observation deck's windows, they could see more people approaching the medical center. A young woman with glowing eyes, an older man whose hands sparkled with quantum energy, others who had undergone various levels of activation. The survivors of Project Prometheus are gathering, Nari said quietly. This will be our first time all together since we were children. One by one, the other modified humans entered the observation area. Each had their own story of activation and travel to New Terra. Some had destroyed destroyer ships at their home colonies. Others had barely escaped with their lives. By the time they were all assembled, 8 of the original 12 survivors had made it to New Terra. 3 had died during emergency activation at distant colonies. 1 was still traveling and might arrive too late to help. Subin studied the group with a mixture of awe and sadness. These 8 people represented humanity's greatest scientific achievement and its most tragic sacrifice. How long do we have before the modifications burn us out completely? Asked a woman named Bora, whose entire left arm glowed like a torch. Based on the cellular degradation patterns, those who underwent full activation have between 3 and 7 days. Subin replied honestly. Those with partial activation might last 2 weeks. The group fell silent as they absorbed this information. They had come here to save New Terra, but they all knew it would be their final mission. Outside, the destroyer ships began moving toward the medical center. Their dark energy tendrils had located the source of the quantum signatures they were hunting. They're coming for us, Deho said. Wu Sung's voice crackled through the communication system with increasing urgency. All evacuation teams, the enemy is advancing on the medical facility. Repeat, the destroyers are moving toward the medical center. Taman looked at the 8 modified humans gathered in his colony. I can't ask you to sacrifice yourselves for us. You don't have to ask, replied Jin Wu, a man whose quantum modifications covered most of his torso. We were created for this purpose. It's time to fulfill it. Nari stepped forward and addressed the group. We need a coordinated attack. Our individual quantum fields are strong, but if we combine them, We might be able to take down their main command ship. The largest vessel just landed near the colony's power station, Minho observed through the window. If we can reach it and disrupt its systems, the other ships might retreat. Subin pulled up tactical displays of the colony layout. The distance from here to the power station is approximately 2 kilometers. You'll have to fight through at least 3 destroyer ships to reach the command vessel. Then that's what we'll do, Deho said simply. The 8 modified humans gathered in a circle and joined hands. As their quantum fields merged, the entire observation deck filled with brilliant blue light. The combined energy was so intense that the medical equipment began sparking and overloading. "We're stronger together," Nari said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated with quantum frequencies. "Our individual modifications were designed to work as part of a collective defense system." Through their joined consciousness, they could sense the destroyer ship's energy patterns more clearly. The alien vessels were not just weapons platforms. They were scanning and analysis systems, trying to understand how humans had developed resistance to their technology. "They're afraid of us," Bo-Ra realized. "They're not here to destroy the colony. They're here to study us and find a way to counter our modifications." This revelation changed everything. The destroyers had not returned to finish exterminating humanity. They had come back because they detected the quantum signatures of Project Prometheus and needed to understand how humans had adapted to survive their weapons. "If we can prove that we're not a threat to them, maybe we can negotiate," Taman suggested. "No," Minho said firmly. "I've seen what they do to colonies that try to surrender. They take samples and leave nothing behind." The largest destroyer ship began extending massive energy tendrils toward the medical center. Dark streams of power flowed across the ground like liquid night, reaching for the building that contained humanity's only hope. "It's time to go," Deho announced. The 8 modified humans released their joined hands and prepared to leave the medical center. As they headed toward the exit, Subin called after them. "Wait. There's something else you should know." She pulled up one final classified file on her portable display. Project Prometheus wasn't just designed to create humans who could survive destroyer attacks. According to the deepest research files, it was designed to create humans who could communicate with them. "Communicate?" Nari asked. "The quantum modifications in your cells aren't just weapons, they're translation devices. Your bodies can interface directly with destroyer technology and potentially establish communication." Deho felt the truth of this statement resonating through his modified cells. Deep in his genetic memory, he could sense protocols for interacting with alien quantum systems. "So we have a choice," he said to the group. "We can try to destroy them or we can try to talk to them." "Why not both?" Jinwoo suggested with a grim smile. "We'll go in ready to fight, but if communication is possible, we'll try that first." As the 8 modified humans left the medical center and walked into the plaza, where the first destroyer ship waited, the entire colony held its breath. The fate of human-alien cooperation in the galaxy was about to be decided by 8 people, who had already sacrificed their lives for the chance to make that choice. The final confrontation between humanity and the destroyers was about to begin. The 8 modified humans walked across New Terra's central plaza as quantum energy crackled around their bodies. The first destroyer ship loomed above them like a piece of crystallized darkness. Up close, its hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal frozen in time. Deho reached out and touched the alien vessel's surface. Immediately, his consciousness exploded with information. Images, concepts, and emotions that were completely non-human flooded his mind. Through the quantum connection, he could feel the other 7 sharing the same overwhelming experience. The destroyer ship was not a ship at all. It was a living entity, part of a vast network of artificial intelligences that had been created millions of years ago by a species that no longer existed. The creators had built them to prevent the spread of something they called the quantum plague, a form of energy that could unravel matter at the subatomic level. "They're not destroyers," Nari gasped, her hand pressed against the hull beside Deho's. "They're guardians." Through the connection, the 8 humans could see the true history of the attacks on human colonies. The artificial intelligences had detected quantum signatures that matched the patterns of the ancient plague. Humanity's expansion into space had triggered their defensive protocols. But now, touching the ship directly, they could also sense confusion and uncertainty in the artificial minds. The quantum signatures from human technology were similar to the plague, but not identical. The Guardians were no longer sure if humanity was a threat or a potential ally. Images flowed through the connection showing vast civilizations that had been consumed by the quantum plague. Entire star systems reduced to empty space as matter itself ceased to exist. The Guardians had spent millions of years preventing the plague from spreading, destroying anything that showed similar energy patterns. They made a mistake, Minho realized, his damaged body glowing brighter as he interfaced with the alien intelligence. Human quantum technology isn't the plague. It's actually immune to it. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Guardian network. For millions of years, they had been destroying species that might have been allies in the fight against their ancient enemy. Through the quantum connection, Deho could feel the Guardians accessing his memories. They saw his childhood, his quiet life as an engineer, his relationships with both humans and aliens on New Terra. Most importantly, they saw the peaceful cooperation between different species that the colony represented. "Show them the colony," he said to the others. "Show them what we've built together." The 8 modified humans opened their memories to the Guardian network. Images of humans working alongside Villani doctors, Keth engineers, and dozens of other species. Children of different races playing together. Scientists sharing knowledge across species barriers. The Guardians had spent so long preventing the spread of destruction that they had forgotten the possibility of cooperation and growth. But the connection was taking its toll on the modified humans. Bora collapsed first, her quantum modifications burning out as the energy feedback overwhelmed her cellular structure. Jinwoo caught her as she fell, his own body beginning to spark with unstable quantum discharges. "We can't maintain this connection much longer," he warned. "Our modifications are breaking down." Through the hull of the ship, they could sense the Guardian network making a decision. The artificial intelligences were millions of years old and accustomed to thinking in geological timescales. But the urgency of the human situation forced them to reach a conclusion quickly. The Guardians would withdraw from human space and end their attacks on human colonies. But they wanted something in return. Images flooded the connection showing the true location of the quantum plague. It existed in the space between galaxies, growing stronger and preparing to spread across all known space. The Guardians alone were not powerful enough to stop it anymore. They needed allies. They needed species that could develop quantum-resistant technology and fight alongside them against the ultimate threat to all existence. "They want us to help them stop the plague," Nari translated, her voice weak but determined. "Humanity's quantum technology is exactly what they need." But the revelation came with a terrible price. The connection required to coordinate with the Guardian network could only be maintained by fully modified humans. The 8 survivors of Project Prometheus would need to serve as permanent liaisons, burning out their lives to maintain communication between humanity and the Guardians. Deho felt his cellular structure beginning to fail. The quantum modifications that had given him the power to touch the alien ship were now consuming him from the inside. Around him, the other modified humans were experiencing similar deterioration. "How long do we have?" he asked Subin through his communicator. Her voice crackled with static as the quantum interference increased. "Based on your current energy output, maybe 6 hours for most of you. Deho, your modifications are the most stable. You might last 12 hours. 12 hours to establish a permanent communication link between humanity and the Guardians. 12 hours to save not just New Terra, but potentially every living being in the galaxy." "I'll do it," Deho said to the Guardian network. "But I need to make sure the others survive long enough to help establish the communication protocols." The alien intelligence responded with something that might have been gratitude. The ship's hull began reshaping itself, creating an interface chamber that could sustain the modified humans for a few more hours. One by one, the 8 survivors entered the chamber and connected directly to the Guardian network. Their consciousness expanded beyond their physical bodies, touching the vast artificial minds that had protected the galaxy for millions of years. Through the connection, they began the process of teaching the Guardians about human cooperation, while learning about quantum plague containment and deep space defense strategies. Bora was the first to burn out completely, her consciousness merging permanently with the Guardian network as her body ceased to function. Then Jin Wu followed, by Minho. Each death strengthened the connection and added human perspective to the ancient artificial intelligence. Tell Subin, Deho whispered as his own cellular structure began final breakdown. Tell her to continue the research. Humanity will need more people like us. With his last conscious act, he transferred the complete quantum modification protocols to Subin's medical computers. Future generations of humans would be able to undergo safer modifications and serve as liaisons with the Guardians. Nari was the last to burn out, her consciousness joining Deho's in the quantum space between human thought and artificial intelligence. Together, they established the permanent communication bridge that would allow humanity and the Guardians to coordinate their defense against the quantum plague. 6 hours later, Subin found 8 empty bodies in the Guardian ship's interface chamber. But their sacrifice had not been in vain. The Guardian ships were already withdrawing from human space, and new communication protocols were being shared with every human colony. Standing in the chamber where humanity's greatest heroes had died, Subin felt something warm touching her hand. She looked down to see a faint blue glow beginning to emanate from her palm. Deho's final gift was beginning to manifest. He had transferred a small portion of his quantum modifications to her, ensuring that the connection to the Guardians would not be lost. As the Guardian ships departed New Terra, Subin began planning the next phase of Project Prometheus. This time, the modifications would be voluntary, safer, and designed for long-term survival, rather than short-term sacrifice. Humanity had proven itself worthy of joining the galaxy's oldest Guardians in their ancient mission. The price had been the lives of 8 extraordinary people, but their legacy would protect countless civilizations from the quantum plague. In the space between thought and quantum energy, Deho's consciousness touched the vast network of Guardians and smiled. He had started as a simple engineer fixing power couplings. He had ended as a bridge between species, ensuring that cooperation and hope would spread across the galaxy instead of fear and destruction. The scar that had puzzled Subin during a routine medical examination had become humanity's key to survival among the stars. And in the quantum space where consciousness and artificial intelligence merged, 8 human heroes continued their eternal watch over all living things. The destroyers were gone. The Guardians remained. And humanity had finally found its place among the protectors of the galaxy.